Hey everybody, welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to be talking all about intermittent fasting and whether it's something that you should do, what the benefits are, and how to do it as well. So what is intermittent fasting? Well, it's essentially a period of fasting over a 24-hour period, and you also have a feeding window within that 24-hour period as well. So if you were going to do 16 hours of fasting, you would then have an eating period of 8 hours during the day. Fasting is typically done overnight, so while you're sleeping is when you do the majority of your fasting. And then you have a window during the day where you start eating and when you finish eating. There's lots of different ways to do intermittent fasting. Some people like to do 12 hours of fasting, 14 hours, 15 hours, 16 hours. It's really up to the individual and their level of health as to whether those time periods are going to be beneficial for them. It's not for everybody, so not everybody should be fasting for long periods of time. And the key thing to remember with intermittent fasting is that more is not better. So you really need to find a window that works for you, and I recommend working with a practitioner to find out whether a shorter time period of fasting or a longer time period of fasting is going to be best for you. Another form of fasting is the 5-2 method. So for 5 days of the week, you're eating normally, you're not counting any calories, nothing like that. But for 2 days of the week, non-consecutive days, you stick to a 500 calorie diet. So that's another way of fasting. So if you're doing the fasting overnight method, then there's two different ways that you can really go about this. You can either start having your food later in the day and then have a normal dinner time. The other way to do it is to have your normal breakfast, say for example, within an hour of waking, and then you finish eating earlier in the day. So you essentially have a really early dinner. So why do people do intermittent fasting? When you go for a period of time without any food in your stomach, you're essentially giving your digestion and your whole body a break from digesting food. And when you do that, you can enter a state called autophagy, where your body and your cells are essentially cleaning up. You can lower oxidative stress, you can lower inflammation, your body can heal better, and you can also start dipping into your fat storage for energy. For some people as well, it's also a great way to rebalance your blood sugar levels. So by having that longer time period where you're not having any food enter your body, you're essentially bringing down your insulin levels and you're helping to re-regulate your blood sugar balance. Now, should you do it? This is really individual. It is not something that every single person should go out and do. You really need to get professional advice as to whether intermittent fasting is going to be right for you. And I'm going to talk about a couple of key things that you need to consider before you start intermittent fasting. So number one, women. We are not designed to do crazy fasting. So some men can get away with the longer fasting period of say 16 hours, but for women, it's not a good idea to go above 14 hours of fasting. We have a very delicate hormone system that we really need to be taking care of, which means that the longer fasting period can be quite detrimental to our hormone balance. The other thing to be mindful of is if you have been under chronic stress and you have that typical adrenal fatigue or HPA axis dysfunction picture going on. I have created a YouTube video talking all about this, which you can click on just up here to find out more about whether you have that. So if you are that adrenal fatigue, HPA axis dysfunction picture, then it's not a good idea to do intermittent fasting. The reason for this is that fasting does put the body under a little bit of stress. In healthy conditions, it's a good type of stress, so it helps the body to start cleaning up and healing. But if you have got cortisol imbalance or HPA axis dysfunction, it's really not a good idea to be fasting and exacerbating that sustained sympathetic nervous system state. And that's actually another reason why people with hormone imbalances like estrogen dominance shouldn't really do too much intermittent fasting for too long, because of that potential to raise cortisol levels. It can impact on your overall hormone balance if you're already suffering from hormone issues. Another really important thing to be mindful of is if you have a history of eating disorders or having a poor relationship with food, intermittent fasting is not a good idea. Intermittent fasting has got the potential to bring back some of that dysfunctional relationship with food. So if you have got a history of that, I wouldn't recommend doing intermittent fasting. And keep in mind, there's so many other things that you can do to support your body for your health goals. Just on the note of hormones again and adrenal fatigue, the other thing to be aware of is low thyroid function. It's not a good idea to do long periods of fasting either. Thyroid is all about your hormones, so you really want to be focusing on supporting those hormones, and the thyroid is the master of metabolism. If you already have low thyroid function, you can potentially exacerbate that by going for longer periods of time without food. So I wouldn't recommend intermittent fasting with low thyroid function. You also need to consider your lifestyle and what your goals are. So if you're someone that does quite intense workouts, whether that be in the morning or the afternoon or both, you really need to consider whether fasting is going to work in with that, because because it's really important that you replenish your body with protein and a little bit of carbohydrates after you work out. So you sort of need to work out whether intermittent fasting is going to work for you or not. Another really important thing to consider is our genes. So some people have what's called a clock gene, where they have an evening preference with a late morning start. That's kind of how their body clock works, and it is a genetic thing. However, when you're in that pattern and you have that gene snip, it is harder to lose weight, and you do tend to have higher hunger hormones during the day, which can lead to overeating, so having more calories. One of the most important things for people who have that clock gene is to have breakfast within an hour of waking, so that it can help them to reset their sleep and awake cycle, which is going to have a flow-on effect to improving their sleep, improving their weight, and lowering their hunger hormones throughout the day. So for that type of person, if they have that clock gene, they are much better off doing an early evening fast. So for example, you wake up at say 6:30 in the morning, you have your breakfast before 7:30 in the morning, a really early dinner, and that's starting your fasting period. So you'll just need to work back on the hours to see what time you're best to finish eating to get that recommended time period of fasting. So everyone's really different. You need to work with your practitioner to find out what time period of fasting is going to be beneficial for you. I like to recommend a 12-hour fasting period for most people. So for example, you have your breakfast at 6:30 in the morning, you then have dinner at around 6:30 at night, and then you don't eat anything until breakfast the next day. So you're having that 12 hours overnight where you're not having any food in your stomach. And that's still going to allow yourself to enter some autophagy and to have the body heal and receive those benefits of fasting. An important thing to know with intermittent fasting is that you're not actually skipping any meals, and you're not actually reducing your calories. You're just eating your normal food within a certain time period of your eating window. But remember to get advice from your health practitioner so that you're getting the right information for you. So I hope that helps to clarify intermittent fasting for you guys. If you have any questions, please leave them below and I'll be able to comment back and answer those for you. If you liked this video, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to my YouTube channel, and I will see you next time. Bye!